Okay. By a show of hands, how many of you watch Sunday Night Football? Okay, that should be most people in the room, considering if you don't know much about football, you're going to be a little lost during this presentation. And for those who do know a little something about football, I want you to imagine if you could only throw the ball backwards and you could no longer throw it down the field. See, that would kind of change the whole dynamic of the game. And now I want you to imagine if you had to literally touch the ball down in order to score. See, these are two things that are present in rugby that distinguish it from football. In the U.S., not many people know what rugby is. And when I'm tasked with explaining it to them, I have to say that it's just football without pads, but it's actually very different. See, I grew up playing both football and rugby from the 4th grade all the way up until my senior year of high school. And I was able to participate in multiple state championships, so I kind of know a lot about the two games. See, in rugby, it's a lot more than just football without pads. It has a very complex history that connects to the founding of football. And I'm going to tackle some of the similarities and differences between football and rugby. And then I'm going to explain some of the origins of football. See, both football and rugby have a similar goal in mind, and this is to draw in defenders in order to make gaps for your team to run the ball through and score. See, and some of the positions are also similar in rugby. See, the forwards are kind of like the linemen. And while the linemen block, the forwards, they run the ball, drawing the defenders, which makes space for the gap, which makes gaps for backs who are kind of like the wide receivers to run through and score. All right, and then some of the differences, key differences between rugby and football is the pace of the game and then the method of getting the ball across the field. See, all players in rugby can touch the ball, so the forwards are running the ball as well as the backs, versus football, it's just the wide receivers getting the ball and taking off. Wide receivers are running backs, of course. And then you cannot throw the ball forward or it's a penalty in rugby. And then there's no blocking, and blocking is also a penalty. And when there's a penalty, it's either a kick or a scrum. And something that is similar to blocking, though, is a ruck. In a ruck, that would happen right here at the tackle right here. And here's kind of like what it looks like. So you have the person with the ball who goes down. You have a support player, which is just any player that's nearby. He goes over to prevent the defender from getting to the ball. And then you have the scrum half, who is kind of like the quarterback. And he gets the ball back out in order to play, to continue the play. And there are no plays in rugby unless there's a penalty. The penalty is the only time that the game actually stops. And when there's a penalty, there's a scrum. And scrums are also kind of like a form of blocking, because it's like all of the forwards come together and they contest against each other as seen on here, and they push against each other. And the scrum half, he puts the ball in on the side, and they have to push against each other to get the ball back to the back of the scrum so it can go to their team. All right. Now I'll explain the history and how it connects, how the history of rugby connects to the history of football. See, football evolved from rugby, and it's kind of like a cross between rugby and soccer. See, during the time of Great Migration from Europe to the United States, in the early or the late 1800s, the European sports, rugby and soccer, which is football, European football, they were both adapted into American football. And it started between Harvard and McGill University. And they had a game together. And this was the first game of football ever played. And this was in the early 1900s. All right. So hopefully you gained a little knowledge on the goals position and the method of play that have to do with rugby and football, and understand now where football came from. And rugby is a renowned sport, so it is very important for us to understand that this history of rugby connects to our culture for the people who love football. All right, thank you.